Yes, we have oil consumption. Yes, we have massive DEF consumption. Yes, I had a check engine light pop on. And what other issues do we have? An oil leak, of course. 2,000 miles. Yes, there are a bunch of issues that popped up right in the beginning, but that's not holding me back from taking this thing off-roading, getting it ready to be towing next month. And let me tell you, these first 2,000 miles have been an up and down roller coaster of pure excitement and, of course, some frustration. So let's get into this. Now, I'm going to lead off with the oil consumption because people often talk about that. Now, these LZ0 engines come with an extra quart of oil inside the engine to compensate for the consumption that they're going to use during break-ins. So when you pull your dipstick, if you're going to look at it, you're going to see that it's overfilled. Leave it alone. It's in break-in. Do at least 500 miles of nothing extreme, which is what I did. I actually ran it up to about 1,000 miles where I did nothing extreme. And so now we're at the 2,000 mile point and pulling the dipstick. We're just above the crosshatch area, which means that we've consumed almost a quart. But again, that's just a rough guesstimate. But we are consuming oil, which is normal for break-in, and our break-in should be completed fairly soon, I would assume. But I don't know how long it's going to take for these steel pistons to really break in and get the rings all seated and everything. But anyway, let's move on to DEF consumption because we're talking about consumption. 3.5 gallons this thing used in 2,180 miles. That's huge. My tank was down to 36%. I was getting notifications when I was off-roading. Now, obviously, off-roading, you're going to use more DEF because it's under load out there, but this still was excessive. Now, if you're going to go tow with the truck, it's going to consume a lot of DEF fluid as well. So I'm a little worried because I'm towing next month, and we went 2,180 miles and needed 3.5 gallons of DEF. So I feel like I'm going to need to bring like 5 gallons of DEF with me if I tow. But stay tuned for that next month because we will be towing, and I can tell you exactly what those numbers come out to be. Now, my calculations came out to 622 miles per gallon. That is quite high. That is very high. But hopefully that's just during break-in. And now let's go into my SES Light that popped on. That came in at 1,366 miles, and that was a P22FE NOx 2 performance. Now, I only have 1,300 miles on the truck, so I decided let's just clear this thing because the whole system is trying to learn itself and everything's got to adjust. Let's just ignore this code. I'm not telling everybody else to do that, but in my instance, what I chose was to just delete the code because if there's an issue, this code is going to come right back, right? So now we've gone another 1,000+ miles, code has not returned. Now, if you're checking that out, you saw that I have the Banks dual stealth pod right there. That's what I used to clear the code. Those are fantastic. I love watching the data. I like to see when the regen is happening, when it's about to happen, all the information on the screen right there. And in my case, I'm running dual. Now, you can also run a single, which I ran when I first got the truck. Loved that as well. You can't go wrong with any of these Bank Stealth Pods. Link down in the description if you're interested. I highly, highly recommend you get one of those if you're someone like me that really likes to look at data. Now, let's move on to my oil leak because I'm just trying to get all the problems out of the way. We've got the cool stuff coming though. We've got off-road coming. We've got, well, trans temps were massively high during off-roading. But anyway, let's go back to what we were talking about now. I did already have an oil leak. And so I crawled underneath it and checked it out. And it looks like it's either from the rear cover plate or it's from the lower oil pan. And I did do a video on this and you guys were super cool about commenting on what you thought it was. Now I cleaned it off, drove it around, and it looks like it is the lower oil pan. And now that I'm just over 2,000 miles, I'm not ready to do, like, it's not dripping horribly bad, but it is dripping. So I'm just kind of waiting a little bit longer. I want to get the break-in fully completed on this engine and then have the oil pan replaced because then I'm going to get a fresh oil change with it and it just makes more sense that way. Now, talking about maintenance, I did also rotate the tires because when I hit the 2,000 mile mark, I could hear the tires humming a little bit more. And I felt, what the hey, if I've got it up on the rack, let's go ahead and rotate them. And I'm glad I did because I could feel the feathering on the front tires just a little bit and not so much on the rear. So I went ahead and rotated those. And yes, the noise did go down a little bit. Now, I'm not saying that there's a lot of noise from these tires. I'm just saying that there was some noise on there, and I want these tires to last as long as possible. So I went ahead and rotated them. Now, since it's already up on the rack, I'm one of those people that likes to get all the fluids out as soon as possible. And typically 1,000 miles is my mark. I waited until 2,000 miles to do the diff cover. And of course, I got to use the PPE diff cover because it adds a quart to the rear differential. And now the reason I do this is because the gears have to wear in, and that's why you want to wait about at least 1,000 miles, because the gears are meshing within each other and they're going to create a little bit of metal debris, and now is a good chance to get that out. So I went ahead and swapped that diff cover. Super happy with that. It looks awesome. I did have some rubbing on the rear heat shield for the spare tire, so I just had to do some modifications to that heat shield right there. So that's no big deal at all. Now, I also did jump right into intake modifications for this truck. And if you followed along on the channel, you know that I am kind of against intakes in general. They don't improve fuel mileage in my usage. They all suck in hot air from the engine bay, which is bad. And that's not good because you need cool air to really go into this turbo, because the turbo actually heats up the air. That's why you have the charge air cooler. And a side note, I am installing the PP larger charge air cooler real soon, so definitely look out for that. But anyway, back to the intake mod. So what I decided to do on this truck was just a straight K&N drop-in air filter. I did the PPE intake elbow, and then I went ahead and put on the PPE Zilla intake pipe. And I did everything in increments and watch my fuel mileage to see if anything changed. I also monitored the sound, and I'll tell you, there wasn't much sound increase with really anything. Until I put the PPE Zilla pipe on there, then there was a moderate sound increase. If that's what you're after. If you want more sound and better throttle response, the PP Zilla pipe is really all you need. Now, dropping in the K&N air filter, no change in fuel mileage, no change in much of anything really. I mean, maybe slight difference on throttle response, but typically the stock air box is a good performer. The stock air filter is a good performer, and the K&N air filter is just gonna give you some cleanability and hopefully a little bit more better breathing, and maybe we'll notice that later on. Since we talked about fuel mileage a little bit, now I do follow my fuel mileage to the mile on my Fuelie app, and if you're a follower of the channel, you know that I've done that for since the past 2 trucks at least. And so I have a lot of records, and now my prior truck was a 23 High Country with the LZ0 engine, which is same as this engine. However, that one had the max tow package, so it had 373 gears. But I also added the ZR2 wheels and tires to it, and I did hand calculations with that. So I'm able to compare the fuel mileage to the 2 trucks, I believe. And the prior truck really saw 24-ish miles per gallon, when this truck is hovering right around 23 miles per gallon. So they're right there with each other, and I think this this new one, the ZR2, is going to get better fuel mileage as we continue on, just because everything's going to break in, and the emission system is all going to figure itself out. When I first got the truck, I also added on the GM high clearance steps at that time, just because it made sense. We had them in stock at the dealership, and I needed steps right away. However, I was torn between, did I want the boost steps or did I want the GM high clearance steps? Well, I decided let's just go ahead and do both. So I swapped out the GM high clearance steps with some of the boost steps. Now, if you haven't seen that video, I definitely suggest you check that thing out because it's rad. Those steps are super cool, the way that all the lights work and everything. I won't go too much into it because I got a full video on it, but I absolutely love those boost steps. Now, let's get to the fun part of the off-roading. The off-roading was super fun. So the ZR2, that suspension just absorbs everything so magnificently. It is amazing. So just driving on regular, like a washboardy type road, it's just a regular fire road. I can fly through this, and it's just absorbing all the little washboard imperfections throughout the road. The little potholes that are all mixed out. It's super rad. The turning ability of this, the grip is there, everything about this, it's so composed. I absolutely love it. So then, obviously, I had greater confidence in the truck, so I decided to go on a little bit tighter roads
I didn't know it was a drop.
or trails. And the truck just continued just doing really well. I mean, confidence was there. So I saw a hill, and I've taken the kids up this hill.
Oh, I didn't know that was a drop
dirt
either.
bikes before, so I figured out what the heck. Let's just take the truck up there and see what it can do. And
4
It
high or 4
handled
low?
it like nothing. I was really worried in the beginning. I just clicked it into 4 high,
The
and we
Jeep's
just kind
driving
of
by
went
like
for it. I
what?
didn't go crazy. I wasn't mobbing
What we're
up it
doing.
super hard, but
Okay, I admit this was a terrible idea. Dude, this is like no effort. But now I can't see anything in front of me. Oh, we got to turn. Oh, look at that.
just a steady climb, and it got up there. But man, when I got to the top, that trans temp was through the roof. Definitely something that I'm concerned about and have been concerned about because the trans cooler, just it's a really tiny trans cooler. So I'm going to swap that out with a PPE trans cooler in the future, and that's going to help keep these temperatures under control. Now there is a transmission bypass valve that's located down by the oil pan on the right side, and that basically comes out at 196 degrees. It opens up, and that's when fluid flows from the trans through the trans cooler. So you're really not going to get better than 196, but with a larger trans cooler up front, it's really going to help out because when that fluid starts coming through, it's going to cool immediately, and there's going to be a lot more cooling efficiency right there. So that's why I want to go with that. And then eventually I'll put on the trans pan as well, and that's going to give me an extra 4 quarts of fluid, which is going to help me keep a better temperature. It's going to take longer for the temperature to get higher, and then as it cools, we're going to have better cooling capabilities right there. So I'm definitely, that's in the future. And again, that's going to be in my towing video. But let's check out some of the off-roading stuff here as well. I wanted to check the ground clearance a little bit. So I went over this little up and down. But I know it doesn't seem like much probably from the video, but the angles were there. It felt much worse in the truck than it does through the videos. But that's it. We are 2,200-ish miles in, and the truck has been amazing. Yes, there are some issues with it, but they're all easily fixable, and we're going to go ahead and work on that, which is not that big of a deal. But I've got some big stuff coming. We have the Boost Auto tow mirrors coming up, charge air cooler being installed. That's by PPE. What else we got? We have the trans cooler, like I mentioned. We have the trans pan. We've already done the rear diff cover. I mean, this thing is going to be ready. I'm thinking about doing some spacers on the wheels to kind of kick them out because the tires are kind of sucked in a little bit, and I think we can have a better look like that. But I'm loving this truck so far. No regrets. I cannot believe how good the suspension works on the road, off road. I can't believe that you could have good suspension that does both, but this definitely does. But we're going to be towing with this next month, so I'm definitely going to have some cool stuff to share with you guys on that, and hopefully our DEF consumption goes down a little bit so that way I'm not topping off DEF fluid everywhere I go. But stay tuned for the future videos. See ya.